that's all I got for mics right now, guys. That's the mic section.
Sweet.
Six
I'll go
mics.
through controllers real quick. You're going to want to have a good keyboard, and that's also known as a MIDI controller, or you can get them as a workstation where they will act as a computer and make a whole song for you. Some of these ones, what's that one? The Nico? I don't know if you guys ever heard of them. They have a built-in computer. They can also run other controllers, and they keep updating these things. And they're very expensive. They're going to cost you about 6 to 12 G's easy. So I don't even know why I bring that up, but
Yeah.
it's a good controller, probably one of the best ones.
Yeah.
Also, we
Studio
can talk
Basic.
about the Machine Studio, or the Machine MK2 or 1. Machine is a very good product. They keep sending updates out for that as well.
That's new one
Also,
just come out, yeah.
you guys want to talk something about that?
No. It's new update that's just come out for the machine that gives
Also,
you
we
more
got
flexibility.
the line of Akai controllers, and Akai has so much. They have a piano controller, the Akai, what is it, 49? Can't even remember the
Yeah,
name of it.
49 upwards. Yeah, it's like a series of them. Yeah, no, but very good controllers. Akai really got into that market once they dropped the ball with the MPCs way back in the 90s or early 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they produced some very good controllers for the price. They're excellent quality, and yeah, I would advise if you can get one, get
Check
one.
them out. They're very nice. They look like solid hardware. Even the
Yes, it does.
advanced ones now, they look so solid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also, you know, Akai, they have their MPC Studio, they have the MPC Touch, and the MPC Renaissance, and you can keep going back and take your pick. There's all kinds of controllers out there. We also have controllers for our audio. If you're a DJ, you can get controllers for your lighting. That's all I'm going to say really about controllers.
In terms of all controllers working through MIDI, or are the majority of them now USB?
I've seen lots of them either way, and they got that USB MIDI now, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Still MIDI.
Which one do you use? What control do you use? Because I know you use a control on yours.
I have a few controllers. I use Machine Studio. I actually started out with the MK1, and I didn't want to really get the MK2 because it just seemed like a waste of money just for a little bit of colored lights. So I waited, and sure enough, they came out with the Studio. So lucky for me, I didn't go waste money on the MK2, and I waited, so I got the Studio. Then I got the MPC Touch. I also got Pro Keys, M-Audio Pro Keys.
Yeah.
And I have a mixer controller, the Presonus CS18.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, so
but basically that's like a mixer in itself that interacts with your computer.
Yes.
It gives you all the functionality of actually having an old school analog mixer. So it allows you to push the faders and twist knobs to use plugins and things like a real desk. Yeah,
exactly.
Those aren't cheap though, but yeah, that's
not at all. Set me back a little bit.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one point about controllers, which I think is quite useful. Korg brought out the iconic Micro Korg, which is I actually don't have it here in this studio. So that's a small keyboard, but basically it's used as a keyboard to emulate other instruments or other synths like the old Moogs and things like that. They're quite cheap. They go for anything around about $120 to about $180 second hand. But the usefulness about having one of those as a controller, not only is it an external instrument that produces audio that you can actually then connect via an audio interface into your computer, but will work as a controller as well, because they have USB connectivity, which you can plug in directly to your machine. So then that way means that any virtual instruments that you have, such as a piano or a sampler or something, you can actually play that with the keys from the actual keyboard and record audio at the same time as well. So you can kill two birds in one stone. If you're really on a budget, then to get a small keyboard like that, or a small synth, digital synth, that works as a controller will be very useful to you inside the studio for A, saving space, B, for killing two birds with one stone by having the controller and instrument in one, rather opposed to having a separate noise-making machine, a synth or something like that, and a controller. So look into that. You know, the microcorgs were used by, it was a studio standard way back in between 90s all the way through the noughties, and even now that you're going to most studios and they'll have a Korg micro somewhere sitting around, and the sounds became quite known and renowned for emulating the machines that they said they were emulating, such as the Moogs and things, and you'll hear those bass sounds in hundreds of thousands of recordings, for the reason that they were a great budget instrument that small producers that started out in the bedroom would use to create the bass sounds that you hear on a lot of hip-hop records. So for a budget, it's a great piece of gear to have. And that's all I sort of wanted to add really about controllers.
Good point. So just to mention a few cheap and basic starting controllers. We've got the Casio 32 mini key.
Yeah, it's good.
And you can get that for about $50. You just go check it out on Amazon. What else? There's other little controllers you can find on Amazon, like DJ controllers, if that's what you want in your studio for your scratching. You get those little...
That's right. Nano, I think it's Nano Korg or Nano Keys or something like that by Korg, which is a really small controller, almost like MPC pads.
Got like what, 12 pads on it or something?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Those are quite cheap, and again, space saving.
Yep.
What you've got to look at when you're buying a controller is, what do you want to use the controller for? For example, if you're beat producing and you want something that emulates an old MPC, then if you can get an old machine, it's great to have. Or you can just pick up Akai controllers that just have the pads on. Wax mentioned the AK-49. There are some slight more budget, but they have the pads on as well. I mentioned the Nano Korg, so if you're making beats and you like to, bang out the beat, then those are great for that. And then obviously if you want to play an instrument, then you've got the Casio, and then you've got all the way up to big controllers where you've got a full-size keyboard range, as in octave range. If you need that, then you can buy one of those controllers. So just think about what it is that you want, and then there will be a controller for you in terms of budget and what you want to use it for. No point buying a keyboard if you like to bang out beats. You can do that with a keyboard type controller, but for me, if I'm banging out a beat, I like to use the machine or the MPC style pads rather opposed to a keyboard. I can do it on the keyboard, but it doesn't feel the same. It's nice just to have the freedom.
Totally understandable. That's how it was for me when I was first trying to make beats. Like, the piano keyboard wasn't feeling good at all.
Yeah.
I knew I needed a beat machine. I didn't have one at the time, but I knew it would give me the feel of making a beat more than that keyboard did.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the other way around as well. I mean, with the 12 pads, what a lot of people think is, oh, 12 pads is just for beat making. Well, not necessarily, because you can use the 12 pads as a keyboard type instrument. And in fact, it's quite fun if you're trying to come up with little riffs or motifs or little melodies to actually spread out on the 12 pads or 16 pads, however many pads you're using, say piano, because it all goes up in semitones, and you can actually play tunes then on the pads, and it just looks different than a regular piano. And it is quite amazing how just by a visual sight you can actually come up with different types of melodies that you wouldn't necessarily come up with on a piano. Specifically, that you've got octaves almost straight above one another, and it's easier to reach, to jump notes on 16 pad layout than it is to do it on a piano, where all the notes are all laid out sequentially from left to right all the way up and down. So to get to a C, you have to go all the way up 12 keys to get to the other C, where on a pad all you do is you just jump up 4 pads and bash, you've got yourself, you know, another octave or something. So it's easier to create things. So have a go, experiment. You know, that's a good thing to do. We mentioned that kind of stuff in other hangouts to do with beat block and stuff, so check those hangouts as well for those kind of tips. But yeah, I think that's me on controllers. I got nothing else to add on them.
That's it for controllers.
That's it.
You wanna do your
Notice of I was taking notice when you were speaking about the 12 pads and the 16 pads and the piano, that it was just 12 pads on the thing represented an octave, just like an octave on the piano is just an octave.
Yeah, exactly.
From C to C is octave. So I was just taking notice of that, and I noticed like the first pad and the 13 pad are the same pad, just like on the piano.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For the 13 key. That's all I wanted to say. My bad. I was just taking notice of that because I know people have been making.
It's dope though, right?
Transitioning that over.
That's it. I was just checking the pads, and when I was speaking, I was just going, yeah, let me make sure. Yeah, it's right. Did I say it right?
Right. A lot of people gonna do that though. A lot of people gonna do that.
Yeah,
if you know
exactly.
How to play a chord on your piano, and you realize that these pads are just like
That's
the
right.
piano, then you can take your piano chords and translate them over to your beat machine.
Well, that's exactly what our friend J Phil. It's exactly what he did. He just took piano chords and just transposed them to the machine, and he brought out a book showing you all the finger patterns for different chords. Well, if you apply those notes that are being played to a piano, then you'll get your whole piano chord. So yeah, that's what he did. And if you watch any of his videos where he's talking about certain things, and he shows you how to play certain chords, E-7 is, you know, 2 fingers here and 2 there, and so on. And yeah, it's a creative way of getting around problems. Yeah.
That's dope.
Great goods. Okay, moving on. Meek, you want to get into your audio interfaces?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Okay, basically what an audio interface does is it allows you to receive and send signals from your computer. So an audio interface is the most important equipment in a basic studio setup. Now, the reason for that is, depending on the quality of your interface, it's going to affect the quality of the audio that you're going to receive in your computer or in your digital audio workstation that you are recording. So it's all to do with analog to digital converters and digital to analog converters. Now, what that means is the audio interface connects to your machine, your computer, to receive the signal. But then your computer, to output that signal, so for you to hear something, you need to connect that audio interface to monitors, okay? So the signal going in to the machine, if you've got anything, your computer, if you've got anything like a microphone or an instrument or a synthesizer or anything that is not USB, you need to record that signal in, that is an analog signal, okay? Doesn't matter if it's created by digital oscillators or anything. If you've got any signal that has an output from any instrument, vocals, synthesizer, whatever it is, and it has an output, you plug a lead into that and a lead into the input of your audio interface. You play stuff and it goes through your audio interface, through circuitry, and into your computer. And the quality of the interface will affect the quality of the audio by the amount of sampling rate or the processing that the actual audio interface has itself. So to sort of clarify things, because I mentioned processing before on the computer, is you have a processor inside your computer that does all the brain work, records, oh, this plug-in and this affects this is so loud, this pans to the left, to the right, and so on. And you also have circuitry and processors inside of your audio interface that turns that analog signal into a digital signal. It converts it so into a format, into ones and zeros that the computer can understand and translate it back into an audio wave file. Once that is done, it then has to spit it back, send ones and zeros again back to the interface. The interface then processes it and changes it back into analog signal, which then comes out of your monitors. Okay. Now, if you've got a bad interface, then the quality of the signal going in compared to the quality of the signal that you hear won't sound as accurate. Okay, it will sound colored, and what we mean by colored is the interface will slightly change the frequency of it, which can equalize it slightly different. So if you play a guitar chord that sounds quite bright and nice, or a piano chord like a C major chord quite high up on the synth, and it sounds nice on the actual instrument itself, when it records into the computer and then spits it back out, it might sound a little bit muddy. It might sound, when you press the chord, the sound doesn't record straight away. There's a small delay in between, and then you hear the sound. All that has to do with your interface and the amount of RAM that you have on your computer. Now, I could go on about interfaces for ages and ages and ages, because there are so many, and there are so many factors that contribute to the actual sound quality that goes in your machine. But to keep things basic, a good interface that has just come out as an update that I would advise for any kind of sort of studio basic or small startup studio are the Focusrite Scarlett interfaces. Now you can get the Scarlett one, which is almost just like a small box with an input and an outputs that allow you to connect just one instrument into the machine and a left and a right monitor out to be able to hear it. Now these interfaces by Focusrite are actually very good quality for the amount of money that you're paying. There's very little what they call latency, which just a while back I was talking about. When you record an instrument, you play the chord, but then you don't hear it from your speakers in time quickly enough. That's called latency because it slows down the signal. Now these small budget interfaces actually boast that there's very little or no latency at all. So when you press a chord, you hear it back immediately. So it sends it to the machine, processes it very quickly, sends it as ones and zeros to the machine processes it much faster, sends it back out, and you get quite an accurate reading for A, the sound that you actually played in, so it sounds as bright as it did, and B, the speed of how quickly it was processed through the interface, so very little latency. Now these interfaces cost from about $100 upwards, and they've got a whole series all the way through to their top of the range model, which goes into thousands of dollars. But the low end Focusrite stuff is really very good, and you don't need more than Scarlett 1 or Scarlett 2i. Now, the reason that I mentioned a 2i, it's a little bit more expensive. It's probably about 40 or 50 bucks more expensive. But that has a built-in MIDI interface, which is very useful. Now, interface, just recapping, is basically what it is. It's just interfacing of sound or interfacing of information into your computer. Now, the Scarlett 2i with the added MIDI interface allows you to connect a studio controller through the interface rather than taking up lots of USB ports on your actual computer. So when you buy a computer, you normally have about 3 or 4 USB jacks or Thunderbolts or Firewires or whatever you are. I think it's probably going to be USB 3s. Now, every time you connect something to your machine, you take up a little USB slot. So if you've got lots of controllers and lots of instruments like synthesizers that are plugging in directly and any other gear that you've got, if you go through an audio interface, it basically takes all that processing power out of your computer and also frees up those little USB plugins. So the Scarlett 2i has one USB in, but allows you to plug in a microphone and an instrument and a controller, all for the price of the space of one USB connection. If you had to do all that separately, you'd take up 3 connections to do that. So an audio interface has that advantage of doing that. So if you get the 2i, that's great because it allows you to do everything that you want. And also, because of that quality of sound that you're getting some very good preamps for budget price. Now, what the interface does, it boosts a signal, an incoming signal. Okay, so for example, if you've got a dynamic microphone like Sipp was talking about, the SM58, and you're dropping some bars, recording some vocals, or even recording an instrument that you want to record with a microphone, then you can increase the amount of input level to get a clearer signal. Okay. Now, if you don't have a studio interface or an audio interface and you plug in a microphone directly into your computer, for example, you could use a normal iPhone microphone with for example, if we're talking about Apple products, if you've got a little Apple headphones with a little microphone, you could use that to record things and plug that directly into your computer. You're going to get an okay recording, but it's not going to be quite the quality of a separate microphone. And also, you're not going to be able to boost that volume independently like you would with an audio interface. So the audio interface will then have the volume of your actual system, but will allow you to boost that volume further to get a better recording signal that the digital audio workstation can actually record. So that's what an audio interface is for. It's basically to receive the signal, and then once it hits the DAW and you mess around with plugins and things, it spits that signal back out via some monitors. And the better the audio interface, the less amount of latency you've got, and the more accurate the sound that you've recorded into is going to come out. And of course, there are other things pending, such as monitors and stuff, but the audio interface is, after your computer, is where you should spend your next bit of budget on. And I would advise you to spend, again, as much as you can afford, but just leave some gap for an SM58, which will probably set you back about another $125 or something like that. So all in all, for about, as I mentioned, $1,500, you can get a controller, a computer, a mic, and a good audio basic interface. And then you can get some monitors as well. But that's not going to be my thing. I'm not going to talk about monitors. I'll let someone else talk about monitors.
Back to you,
Wax.
Who got monitors?
Well, I had monitors. I didn't think we was talking monitors today because we said the microphone. So I was saving monitors for another thing. I didn't got all my notes together for the monitors. I only got the one for the mic.
I can talk monitors if you want.
I could too.
You want to talk about your monitors, Wax? You've got some monitors.
For sure. I got a couple pair of monitors. I got some PA monitors and I got some reference monitors. PA is more for live performance or church or assembly. And your studio reference, they're more for productions and hearing things from the flat level you need to hear them from. I started off with a pair of KRKs, just the little small ones. I didn't like them. I found them too hollow. I immediately upgraded to the Yamaha, the entry-level ones, and I just loved the way they sounded, so I knew I needed the bigger ones, the HS80s. So I went and upgraded, got to those, 750 each. Oh my God, it was worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just explain quickly what they mean by the HS80s, HS6, HS5s, and so on. Basically, the 80 means 8 inches. Okay. Yeah. It means that the actual cone, the big sub cone, not the tweeter. The tweeter's a little speaker at the top. Then you've got the sub, which is like the bigger cone. The HS80 means that that's bigger than the HS5, which means it's only a 5-inch one, so it's much smaller. It's smaller than it's getting to the size of the tweeter on top. Now, the tweeter, the little tiny thing on a monitor, is responsible for your high frequencies, okay? And your big sub at the bottom is responsible for your bass frequencies. So the bigger that speaker at the bottom is, the lower the frequency range will be that it will be able to monitor. Now, just covering back what Wax was saying about PA means public address, okay? So every time you see PA speakers, they're not for studio work, like Wax says, they're for live work. Now, studio monitors, what they do is they are made, like Wax says, as a flat frequency response. Now, what that means is that it is made to highlight all the rubbish signal or all the frequencies that don't sound nice. So when you're in the studio, the monitors have a greater frequency range than a normal speaker because they're not EQ'd. Okay, so like Wax mentioned earlier in the intro, they're made differently. And the reason for that is that you want to hear all the bad signals. So if your guitars are very mid-strong, as in the middle frequencies of the range, if they're very high and it grates and it doesn't sound nice, that's a good thing if you hear that through your monitors, because then you can cut it or you can EQ those frequencies out so it sounds pleasant. And the whole philosophy behind the studio monitor speakers is so that when you translate the music and you play it on your MP3 in your ears or MP4, or you listen to it on your car stereo or through your iPod docking bay, whatever, that the music sounds nice and pleasant. Okay, so the difference between cheap monitors and expensive monitors is the amount of frequency range and the flatness of the responsiveness. So it means that the speakers aren't colored. If the speakers are colored, it means that certain frequencies have been highlighted to give you a more pleasing sound. Now, some producers like to hear more pleasing sound because it gets them in the zone, and they like to create mixes with those things already to give them their character sound. Other producers like very flat frequencies so they can hear all the frequencies that sound really bad, and they like to mix that, and that really is a personal choice. That's why there are so many different monitor types available. And like Wax said, he's tried a few different ones and he prefers his HS80s because it sounds right to his ears, and he can mix well with those because that's what he hears internally. We all perceive sound slightly differently. So yeah, it's a real personal choice, his monitor, but it's vital that you pick some good monitors for your studio.
That's my advice, is to actually play around and listen to your monitors, and don't buy them unless you can take them back if you don't like them. Straight up.
That's right.
And if you buy some monitors, make sure you set them up properly. I think it's called the equilateral triangle that you want to set them up pointing directly towards your ears, because if you don't, you just wasted a lot of money.
That's right. That's
in
right.
buying
Yeah.
monitors if you don't have them placed right.
That's right. They have to be
Um,
set up properly. There are tests for that, which are LEDR tests, which you can find on the internet, and it helps you set up the monitors in that kind of equilateral triangle. And a good way to test that, if you can't find these things, is you should be able to turn to the left and to the right. And when you turn one way at 45 degrees, you should be looking directly into your speakers. Okay, so I mean, it shouldn't be slightly at an angle away. They should be looking straight at you. And your tweeters and your subs, your ears should be roughly in the middle of the tweeters or slightly above the actual bass, the big sub speakers there, to give you the best kind of sound. I was going to add something else, and I've forgotten where I was going to go with that. That was
so
quite
many points.
No, there was something else, not only about the setup that Wax that Sipp was saying, but there was something else about the monitors. Can't remember.
With my PA monitors, I basically bought that set so I would have something to play back and reference on. And I wanted something powerful enough to give me a club feel, that real boom, 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 boom. So I wanted them to pound and scream. That's why I went PA. I went and I got me 1100 watts.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that's a good point, because that is in fact, you know, a similar point to what I was going to raise. But what I was going to raise was to know your monitors. Okay, so for example, if you like Dr. Dre production kind of style, you like the way that he mixes things, you like the sound that he gets, then what you do, this is called setting up a reference mix. Okay, you listen back to his music through your setup. So you play, you know, your MP3s or whatever through your studio monitors, through your computer, through your audio interface, and listen very attentively of how that bass drum sounds, how that snare sounds, how the synths sound. So then you can hear what a good mix should sound like on your speakers. And then what you do is, when you're creating things, you try and get the same kind of sound with your setup. Okay, so if you know that his bass drum sounds a certain way, then you try to get your bass drum to sound like his does on your monitors. And if you do that, then you know you've got quite a close similarity to what you're trying to emulate, okay, or what you're trying to copy. So that's called setting up a reference mix. When you listen to that, you're referencing something through your own monitors. So it doesn't matter what kind of music you do, whether you play country, rock, whatever. If you like a producer style, Rick Rubin or Foo Fighters kind of stuff, you know, or Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails, that kind of thing, or, you know, anybody else. Exactly. Just listen to the stuff on your setup, because that is how it will sound to you in your room. So try and emulate those sounds through your speakers, and then it'll give you a reference to a good mix. So if the bass drum sounds really boom, 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 and you hear it on your headphones and it doesn't quite sound like that, but it sounds nice on your headphones, and you mix it in your room to sound boom, boom, boom. So then when you hear it on your headphones, it sounds right. So do that a lot. Listen to as much music as you can through your studio monitors. That's what, you know, advice I give to any up and coming, you know, young producer. Listen to it, and then you get used to your monitors.
You got to train your ears. Yes, it's part of the training.
That's something that I did over this last week, and I came to realize I had my bass, like my subwoofer or my bass, any bass instrument, I had it really high, and so did I have my chord progression really high as far as audio volume level. And I was sitting there listening to one of my favorite producers. I ain't gonna say his name, but I was listening to his mix and on through my speakers, and his shit sounded really low. And I'm like, well, why the fuck do my speakers sound like I got some 12-inch subwoofers in here? When, you know what I'm saying, it shouldn't sound like that. So I had to go back and turn the progression down and the bass down. And I mean, that took my mix to a whole nother level, just those two things alone. took my mix to another level, and I have a better understanding of where my audio should sit in the mix.
That's right. That's right. As well, as I mentioned before about the size of your speaker and the quality of your monitors. Oh, one thing that you need for monitors, for going to that, you're best to get powered monitors. Okay, so that means monitors that have
Active.
that plug in to, like you would plug in a computer to power it. So you want powered monitors, because that then means that you have less, you don't need as much space, and the monitors themselves will give you a better response than to buy a non-powered monitor, which means that you have to then buy like an external unit that you plug your monitors in, that needs to be plugged into the mains, and you get all sorts of little kind of problems with that. So
We're
get
talking
powered
about 2
monitors.
extra units.
That's right. It's, again, more space. Things can go wrong. The units can be noisy, which can affect your mix and things like that. So get powered monitors, because they'll prevent you.
They also call power monitors active monitors.
That's right.
Right, they're active and passive.
That's right.
I was just looking.
You want active monitors, yeah, absolutely. But going back to the point of mixing basses and things, now the size of the speakers we're getting onto. If bass is always cause a problem in budget studios, okay, or in studio basics, because the environment is not treated acoustically to trap bass, and secondly, the amount of money that someone can afford for some beginner or intermediate monitors. The monitors themselves, if you've ever tried to mix on a laptop and you try to mix bass on a laptop, the laptop speakers are really tiny, and you think you might have bass on there, and you go back and listen to it on big studio monitors, and suddenly you don't hear something, or something that you thought wasn't there, like bass. This is a great problem with laptops. You then hear this massive booming bass coming through. The reason for that is it comes down to the size and the frequency response of your actual monitors themselves. Those tiny little speakers in a laptop don't have the frequency range to what studio monitors have. So you think that you don't have bass, but really you do. And also those little tiny speakers, there will be lots of frequencies clashing and things within the laptop. So you'll be mixing, setting up a bad mix with a laptop. It's not very easy to do. If you're going through the speakers, and certain frequencies cancel out each other, and you can't hear that because of where the speakers are based on a laptop, the angle of the screen that you have, the environment that you have, all contribute to those things. So when you're in the studio and you've got some active monitors, they don't have to be expensive. I use some M1 Active Mark II monitors that I've had for about 14 years or something, and they weren't expensive when they came out. They're around about, I don't know, $200, $250 for a pair, $300 for a pair, but I've got used to those, and I've listened to many hours of music on them, and I've mixed many things on them, that I can get quite a good mix on that because I know where my levels are. But also the frequency range of those monitors are not bad at all, so you can get quite a low frequency range from them, so you can get lots of bass, and you can get a lot of high end, so then you don't get so many frequency clashes and cancellation between them. And also the cancellation is to do with how you've got your monitor set up, not just the quality of it. So those monitors are quite fine for studio basic monitors, and they're active as well. And they're large enough to give you quite a good frequency range, and the sound is flat enough for what I need it. So yeah, those work for me.
I think my monitors are great for a basic setup. They can handle lows and they can do highs as well. They're the JBL 5s, and you just got to get used to the sound and know where the sounds are coming from. And once you got your ears tuned into your monitors, you'll do great. But I think they're good. They're great for basic setup starting out. And I've seen some of the good. I think Brian Michael Cox uses the exact same ones, and he could afford any monitors he wanted. So I would definitely take note of that. What the people you're looking up to are using.
Yeah, good. Yes, good point. Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of basically covers, I think, the monitors, without getting carried away talking about top-end stuff. But yeah, entry-level stuff, active monitors, try to get the best that you can afford, really. As long as they're active and you've got that equilateral triangle going, I think that's, to start off, I think that you're in a good advantageous position rather than just using a laptop.
For sure. Definitely get some monitors. Don't cheap out on them. You will regret it.
Yeah.
And
you need studio monitors.
Try to make music on computer monitors, speakers.
Yeah, you can't. It's good. Just to add something there, just to sort of bring more food for thought for guys that are getting into studio basics. If you read about books about mixing and things like that, the books will normally tell you about testing your sounds. Once you've mixed it on your monitors and your setup, then you can listen back to it on cheap speakers. Now that's quite a good test to do, or benchmarking. The reason for that is that you want to hear that your mix sounds good in all environments. So if it sounds great on your studio monitors, then try to hear it on, some small crap speakers, because the chances are that your audience or someone at home will probably be listening on cheap crap speakers and won't be listening on your great studio monitors, okay? So if it sounds great on your monitors in the studio but doesn't sound very good on your headphones or your cheaper speakers, then it's easier to EQ it from a good mix to sound good on some bad speakers than it is the other way around. Because if it sounds good on others but doesn't sound good on your monitors, the chances are that your mix is wrong and you've got frequency cancellation, which you have to go back and listen to it on your monitors to get rid of that cancellation before bringing down to the smaller speakers. And that's what we do in the studios. We go listen to stuff in our car stereos and things to see if it sounds right.
Right.
Because we're doing that. What we're actually taking something from very high resolution down to low resolution, but still keep all the quality of the high and condense it down to low resolution, rather opposed to having a low resolution and try to boost it to high. It doesn't work like that.
And one thing I like to do, I got Snapchat and I use it pretty much basically for this. And I don't post the videos to my followers, but I will record my mix like for that little couple of seconds I got, and I'll record it and I'll be able to listen to where the bass is topping out at, the hi-hats are at, and see if my mix is sounding right after I hear it coming out of my phone. I don't know why, but it sounds like I can hear my mix better sometimes when I record it into the phone and just hear it playing back to me. That way it gives me a different sound and I can fix those levels.
Dope.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's wrapping it up on basic home studio setup.
Word.
I think so. Any questions you guys have out there that are watching it or watching it on playback, then just drop us a line, either through our website, iForeignSounds.com, or catch us on Twitter on Infamous FSS, or through our Facebook page, Infamous Foreign Sound Society, and just drop us a line, and we'll answer back. Any topics or anything you want covering, we'll try and cover them for you or give you our insights into it, some of our knowledge into that. And we like to hear from you guys as well. It makes us feel good that we're actually doing a job that, you guys relate to and you guys understand. And, of course, we're here to answer all your questions and stuff. It's a two-way conversation, so we like to hear your opinions and stuff. If you think we whack, say so. If you think we're dope, say so. We like to hear dope things all the time, so go ahead and do that, guys.
Word. In the comments, I want to ask y'all to post your basic studio setup or your dream studio setup, for that matter.
Yeah.
Just post it in the comments, and we'll get back with you with a comment and tell you what we think of it.
Oh, Instagrammers. Take a photo of your setup or what you like. Ask us, we'll give you an opinion. That'll be great.
Hell yeah.
All right, y'all. We'll see you Sunday We're going to have a nice, juicy topic for you guys for our Sunday show. We'll keep you posted. If you follow us, you will be up to date. This is DjAirWax, and we out.
Peace.
Meek out in London. See you guys next time.